And we are live! Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Mishnah Mastery! Hooray. We've got our live virtual studio audience of budding Talmudic scholars joining us live on Zoom, where we are going to try, please God, to do not one, not two, but 3 chapters of Mishnah tonight. Are we all excited?
Yes.
Oh God! If you could see these guys' faces now on Zoom, you would. I've never seen excitement like it. Okay, so with that in mind, let's get ourselves underway with chapter 5 of Masechet Chullin. Very exciting. It's not the easiest. It's not the easiest Seder of Mishnayos to be going through, but you guys are battling through like true champions. So let's take a look. At chapter 5. So there's a halacha, and the halacha says from the Torah that you're not allowed to slaughter a mother animal and a child animal on the same day. Some of us might be familiar with such a halacha. That includes animals which are chullin, which are not sanctified for sacrificial purposes, and that includes animals which are kochim, which are sanctified for sacrificial punishments. So we're going to be talking about this halacha and how it is going to play out in terms of different permutations with animals which are sanctified, animals which are not sanctified, animals which are inside the Beis HaMikdash, animals which are outside the Beis HaMikdash, and we're going to see how all of this plays out in the Mishnah. And it's going to be discussing whether you could be liable for the first slaughtering, liable for the second slaughtering, whether you should be punished with lashes for slaughtering a child and the mother on the same day. So it's hopefully not overly complex, but it is quite a lot to kind of keep track of, and there's going to be different scenarios that we're going to be looking at. Fundamentally, the Tanna Kama, the first primary position of the Mishnah, is going to have the attitude, going to have the shita, that even in a situation where you can't eat the animal from the first shechita, you could still be liable for the second animal being slaughtered. Rabbi Shimon is going to be of the opinion that if the first shechita was not edible, then there is no liability for then slaughtering the other animal if the first one was not in an edible state. So hopefully that will play out over the course of the next couple of Mishnayos, and we'll try and go through this together. So, Perek Hey, Mishnah Aleph, the first Mishnah of chapter 5, says the Mishnah, Oso v'yesbeno, the prohibition in the Torah of slaughtering Oso, which is the animal itself, the mother animal, v'esbeno, and its offspring, Noheg bein ba'aretz bein b'chutz la'aretz. That halacha applies whether we are living in Eretz Yisrael or whether we are outside of Eretz Yisrael. Bifnei habayis v'shelo bifnei habayis. It applies during temple times and it applies when there's no temple. B'chulin uv'mukdashim. And the prohibition applies whether it's an animal which is not sanctified for use in the temple or whether it has been. Ketzad. What are we talking about? How is this so? So the first example is going to be where both animals are profane. Both animals are not sanctified for use in the Beis HaMikdash. Hashochet oso v'yesbeno chulin b'chutz. So you're slaughtering both animals which are profane, and you're doing it outside of the Beis HaMikdash. In which case, says the Mishnah, shnehem kasherim. Both are kosher to be eaten. However, v'hasheni sofeg es ha'arbayim. The fact that you have slaughtered the other animal on the same day as the mother, that is going to bring liability for lashes, bring a punishment of lashes of 40 minus 1 lashes for having done so. So they might be kosher animals to eat, but you're incurring liability for having slaughtered the child, the offspring, on the same day as the mother. Case number 2, kodshim bachutz. What if both animals are sanctified as sacrificial animals, and you are slaughtering them outside of the Beis HaMikdash? You're not allowed to do that. Says the Mishnah, Harishon Chayiv Kares. For the first animal, you're going to be liable for kares. You're going to be spiritually cut off because you are slaughtering an animal outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Ushnehem psulin. Both animals are going to be disqualified. Can't use them for sacrifices. Ushnehem sofkin es arbaim. And you're going to incur liability for 40 lashes for having slaughtered one outside of the Beis Hamikdash, and the second animal because it's the offspring and the mother being slaughtered on the same day. Rabbi Shimon, I'm guessing this is all in the Gemara because I don't think it's played out in the Mishnah over here. Rabbi Shimon disagrees with this and only, I think, would say there's only one set of lashes. That's case number 2. Case number 3, says the Mishnah, Chullin bifnin. Both animals are not sanctified, but you are sacrificing them, you're shechting them, slaughtering them inside of the walls of Beis Hamikdash. So the Mishnah says, Shnehem psulim, they're both going to be disqualified. They can't be used for sacrifices. V'hasheni, and the second one, sofeges arabayim. You're going to incur 40 lashes because you have slaughtered a mother and a child on the same day. So there's not going to be lashes for the fact that you're slaughtering inside the Beis Hamikdash, but the second one will incur liability because you can't slaughter the mother and the offspring on the same day. Case number 4. By the way, I'm losing track of the English over here, so I've got no idea if I'm in the right place or not. But Kodshim Bifnin is case number 4. Both are sacrifices, and you're sacrificing both of them inside the Beis Hamikdash, which is the right place to sacrifice sacrificial animals, but one is the mother and one is the offspring. So the Mishnah says, Harishon kasher upatur. The first one is legit. The first one is kosher, and it can be used for the sacrifice. Ufatur, there's no punishment whatsoever. V'hasheni sofeges arbaim upasel. The second one is going to be incurring lashes because you've slaughtered the offspring on the same day as the mother, and you've also just disqualified it from bringing it as a korban, so it's pasul. That is Mishnah Aleph. Mishnah Beis brings us the next set of cases. That was all cases where they were both either Chullin or Kodshim. Now it's going to be cases of where one or the other is Chullin and Kodshim. So Mishnah Beis. The first case is Chullin v'Kodshim b'chutz. You've got one sacrifice and you've got one profane animal, and you're slaughtering them both outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Says the Mishnah, Harishon kasher patur. The first animal is kosher because it's Chullin, and it's patur. You're not going to get punished at all. It's completely legit. V'hasheni sofeges arbaim upasel. The second one, you are going to incur 40 lashes because you've sacrificed 2 animals on the same day, and it's going to be unfit for sacrifice because you've done it outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Case number 6, Kodshim v'Chullin b'chutz. I've got a sacrifice and I've got a profane animal outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Says the Mishnah, Harishon chayav kares upasol. The first sacrifice is going to be liable for kares because you have slaughtered a sacrifice outside of the Beis Hamikdash, and it's pasul because you can't now use it. It's been sacrificed outside. Vasheni kasher. The second animal is going to be kosher, but ushneim sofkin es arbaim. But both of them you're incurring 40 lashes because you've sacrificed an animal and its offspring on the same day. Case number 7. Chullin v'Kodshim bifnin. I'm sacrificing a profane animal and then a sacrifice, and I'm doing that inside the walls of the Beis Hamikdash. Says the Mishnah, Shnehem psulin. Both are going to be unfit for sacrifice, and the first can't be eaten because it's been slaughtered inside the Beis Hamikdash. V'hasheni sofeges arbaim. And the second one is going to be given, you're going to incur the penalty, the punishment of 40 lashes because it's not going to be a valid korban because it's the mother and the offspring being slaughtered on the same day. Case number 8. There's 12 cases in total, by the way, guys, so strap in. Case number 8. Kodshim v'Chullin bifnim. You're slaughtering a sacrifice and a profane animal, within the confines of the Beis Hamikdash. So we might be able to start pre-guessing what the answers are going to be over here. Harishon kasher patur. The first one, which is a sacrifice inside the Beis Hamikdash, it's kosher, it's fit for use in the Beis Hamikdash, upatur, and you're not going to get any punishment whatsoever. V'hasheni sofeg eser abayim upasul. And the second profane animal inside the Beis Hamikdash, you're going to get lashed for sacrificing two animals on the same day, upasul, and it's not going to be fit for sacrificial use because it was chullin, it was profane. Case number 9, chullin bachutz ubifnim. You are sacrificing profane animals. One of them you do outside of the Beis Hamikdash, which is the right place, and one of them inside the Beis Hamikdash. Says the Mishnah, harishon kasher patur. The first one is fit, it's kosher, and you are not going to get any punishments because you are slaughtering it in the right place and it's the right type of animal. For hasheni, the profane animal which you're sacrificing inside, sofeg eser abayim upasul. You're going to get 40 lashes for slaughtering it on the same day, and it's going to be disqualified. It's going to be unfit for sacrifice. Case number 10, kodshim bachutz ubifnim. It's a sacrifice. Two sacrifices. The first one is being done outside. The second one is being done inside. Well, harishon chayiv karis. The first one you're going to get karis for because you're sacrificing slaughtering a sacrifice outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Ushnehem psulin. Both are going to be unfit for use as a sacrifice. Ushnehem sofgin eser abayim. And they are both going to get a punishment of lashes. So the second is disqualified because even though you brought it correctly, it was forbidden to bring because it was an offspring.
I would have thought the lashes. I would have thought the lashes is least of your problems if you're getting carrots, really.
Valid point.
I suppose one is punishment in this world and the other is punishment in the next world.
Maybe, yeah. So the second is lashed because it's animals in the same on the same day, and the first one is gets lashes because it's an animal a sacrifice being slaughtered outside. Case number 11 is chullin bifnim uvachutz. I've got two profane animals, but I'm doing one in the Beis Hamikdash and one outside the Beis Hamikdash. So you can see, guys, we're just going through every permutation of these things. And again, I'm sorry, I'm just not able to keep up with where I am in the English. Baruch Hashem, I don't actually need it. Chullin bifnim uvachutz. So I've got a profane animal inside and outside. Harishon pasul upatur. The first one is disqualified, is invalid because it's a profane animal inside the Beis Hamikdash. Upatur. But I'm not going to get lashes for it because you don't get lashes for slaughtering a profane animal inside the Beis Hamikdash. You can't use it, but you don't get lashed for it. V'hasheni sobeg eser abayim v'kasher. The second one is going to incur 40 lashes because you've slaughtered the mother and the offspring on the same day, but kasher, it is going to be fundamentally fit for eating because it was killed in the right place. And case number 12, kodshim bifnim ubachutz. Sacrifices which one is slaughtered inside in the right place, one is slaughtered outside in the wrong place. Says the Mishnah, harishon kasher upatur. The first one is legit and it is going to be free of any punishment. V'hasheni sobeg eser abayim upasul. And the second one is going to be lashed because you are slaughtering it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, and it's going to be disqualified and can't be used in the Beis Hamikdash because it was slaughtered outside. And that was Mishnah Beis. This long one, this beast, is Mishnah Gimel. So let's have a go at Mishnah Gimel. Hashoichet v'nimtza terefa. If you slaughter an animal and its offspring, and then one of them is found to be a treifa. So So that's our first case. Hashochet la'avodah zara. If you slaughter one of the animals for the sake of idol worship. V'hashochet parachatas. If you sacrifice one to be a para aduma. V'shor haniskal. Or you or one is an ox which was supposed to be stoned because it had been it had gored, it had injured too many people on too many occasions, so it was now needing to be stoned, so it's forbidden to have any benefit from it. The egla arufa, one is an egla arufa, which is the heifer who needed to have its neck broken. If you remember, we talked about this previously, where a corpse is found between two cities, so the procedure to be able to place responsibility on one of these two cities involves the killing of a heifer which gets killed, gets its neck broken. So the egla arufa. So Rabbi Shimon poter. Rabbi Shimon says that you are going to be exempt from lashes for the fact that you have slaughtered a mother and its offspring on the same day. And the reason for that is because if the first one was not going to be fit for consumption, then the second one does not incur a liability of lashes. So because none of these examples are going to be animals that can be eaten, the second one will not incur a punishment of lashes. But the rabbis say that you would be chayav because if you have shechted an animal first, then you are going to be liable for the second one as well. Says the Mishnah, Hashochet v'nisnav la v'yado. If you slaughter an animal and it becomes a carcass, it becomes a nevela, so you don't do the shechita properly, so it becomes a carcass, v'hanoicher, or you stab the animal, you pierce the heart of the animal, v'hama'aker, or you put the knife in and you move it in an upwards motion underneath the wind and the food pipe. So you're uprooting the windpipe and the gullet, which is not the right way. Patur mishum oso ve'esbeno. Then you, because you have not done a proper shchita, you are going to be exempt with regards to the prohibition of slaughtering the mother and the offspring on the same day, because it was not a proper shchita. Continues the Mishnah. Shnayim shalakhu para uvna. So we've dealt now with slaughtering the mother and the offspring on the same day, but now we're also going to look at it from other perspectives with regards to situations where the mother and the offspring may end up being slaughtered on the same day, but not because of you. So Shnaim shalakhu para uvna. You have two customers, two people who have purchased the cow and its offspring. So Ezeh shalakach rishon yishchat rishon. Whoever purchased the animal first should slaughter first, and the second one should wait until the following day so as not to violate the halacha. Vim kadam hasheni zachar. If the second one went and slaughtered first, then that's fine. He benefits from being able to slaughter on that day. But the first owner should wait until the second day. Shachat para va'achakach shnei vaneha. What if you slaughter the mother and afterwards you go and slaughter two offsprings? So are they going to incur separate penalties, or is it just one penalty for the fact that they've been slaughtered on the same day? The Mishnah tells us, Sofeg shmonim. The person is going to be liable for 80 lashes. Because it was two separate actions. One set of lashes is incurred for one offspring, and the other set of lashes is incurred for the second offspring. Says the Mishnah, Shachat shnei vaneha va'achakach shachata. What if you slaughter two offsprings first? Which is not a problem, but then you go and slaughter the mother. So now the Mishnah says, Sofeg et ha'arboim. You're only going to incur one set of lashes. because you have slaughtered the mother on the same day as the children, rather than slaughtering the children, which each have their own separate prohibition, shechting them on the same day as their mother. Says the Mishnah, Shchata ve'es bita ve'es bas bita. What if you slaughter the mother and then you go and slaughter the daughter cow, the daughter female calf, ve'es bas bita, and the grand calf of this cow? Says the Mishnah, Sofeg shmonim. You're going to incur 80 lashes because you have slaughtered the daughter, as it were, and then slaughtered the daughter of the daughter. Shechata ve'es bas bita ve'achar kach shachat bita. You slaughter the mother, and then you slaughter the granddaughter, as it were. Just to clarify for anyone tuning in at this point, we're talking about animals, not people, right? Hello? Who's that? So you slaughter the mother and then you slaughter the granddaughter. Well, that's not the offspring of the mother, so that's not going to be a problem. Va'achar kach shachat bita. And then you go and slaughter the daughter, which is the daughter of the first cow. Says the Mishnah, Sofeg es ha'abayim. You're only going to incur one set of lashes because of the fact that there's, I don't really understand this, but my notes say because there's only one act of shchita on the mother. That's the first position in the Mishnah. However, says Sumchus Omer, Mishum Rabbi Meir, Sumchus says in the name of Rabbi Meir, Sofeg Shmonim, you're going to incur 80 lashes because you slaughtered now the granddaughter on the same day as its mother, and you've slaughtered the daughter on the same day as its mother. Whereas the Tanna Kama says you've only done one action. By slaughtering the daughter, you've apparently only done one action to incur lashes. So that's why, according to the first position, you only get one set of lashes. I'm just going to check to see who the halacha is like, because my brain thinks it's more logical to say like Sumchus and Rabbi Meir, but I just wonder if it tells me. No, it doesn't. All right. Continuing with the Mishnah then, there are specific days of the year where you really have to be careful about selling mothers and offsprings, right? When a seller sells cows, the owner doesn't have to assume that they are going to be killed on the same day. So the owner doesn't have to inform a buyer that they are buying an offspring, let's say, on the same day as the mother. But there are certain times where we can expect for the animals to end up being slaughtered on the same day. And therefore, really, a seller should be telling the customers if they are buying offsprings and mothers on the same day. So the Mishnah says, "Ba'arba prakim b'shana," on 4 occasions in the year, "hamoche behema lachaveiro tzarich lodia." The seller should really be telling the customer that they are potentially putting themselves in a predicament. One example: "Ima macharti lishchot." Should really tell him, Ima macharti lishchot, I've already sold the mother for slaughter, Bita macharti lishchot, and I'm selling the offspring for slaughter as well. Ve'eluhei, these are the days, and these are days when a lot of meat would be eaten. Erev Yom Tov ha'achron shel Chag. The first is Shmini Atzeres, the last day, as it were, of Sukkot. So that was one day. Ve'erev Yom Tov harishon shel Pesach. On the day preceding Seder night, Erev Pesach, that's a day when a lot of meat is going to be eaten at the Seder, so you'd have to tell your customers. Ve'erev Atzeres, on Erev Shavuos, which I guess is a big time to eat meat as well, and Erev Rosh Hashanah, and an Erev Rosh Hashanah. Uchadivrei Rabbi Yossi Aglili, according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, there was a 5th time as well, of Erev Yom HaKippurim Bagalil. In the Galil region, it seems a lot of people ate meat on Erev Yom Kippur, whereas in most other places it seems they ate chicken, and so they had no need to tell their customers. But in the Galil, says Rabbi Yossi Aglili, you would have to tell them there as well. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, Amar Sai, when is this that you have to be telling your customers, Bisman she'ein lo revach. This is at a time where there is a gap, there is an interval between the sales that you don't need to tell. So if there's no gap between sales, then he must be informing the customers. If there was a space, if there was a gap, if there was time in between sales, then he would not need to tell, to inform the buyer, and that's because they won't be. Sorry, let me try that one again. Bisman she'ein lo revach. If there's not enough time for them to be able to do it on another day. So if there's no chance that they're going to be slaughtering them on separate days, then you need to inform. Aval yesh lo revach. If there's enough time still left in the day that they could slaughter them on different days, ein sarich lo dio, then you wouldn't need to tell them. Rabbi Yehuda would agree, however, but moche esa'im lechasan v'esabas lakala should sarich lo dia, that if it was meat that was going to be used at a wedding and he's selling one animal to the groom and one animal to the bride, then you need to tell them, even if you're not selling them on the same day, because it's clear that they're both planning to slaughter the animals on one day for their wedding, and so you would need to notify them that you have sold each of them the mother and the offspring. This chapter, for me, has been flowing a bit more logically and a bit more easily than some of the other stuff that we've been seeing. Okay, I hope you're all in agreement, and if you're not, then chime in with your questions and comments. So, Mishnah Daled. Generally, when a person gives money to purchase an animal, so he doesn't acquire it, at least rabbinically, until he actually takes the animal. So, what if a person gives money for meat and the butcher decides not to slaughter the animal yet because he has no other customers to give the other meat to? So he could just end up with lots of wasted meat. So the Mishnah says, on 4 occasions, if one customer was to give money for meat, we have to force the butcher to actually slaughter the animal. And these are the cases. Afilu shor shave 1,000 dinarim, even if it's an expensive animal, prized bull worth 1,000 dinars, ve'ein lo lokeach ele dinar, and the customer is only paying for 1 dinar's worth of meat. Kofin oso lishchot. We have to force him to slaughter the animal. Sorry, let me just clarify one thing. The 4 occasions are the same 4 occasions that we've listed in the previous Mishnah. So Erev Shmini Atzeres, Erev Pesach, Erev Shavuos, and Erev Rosh Hashanah. So on those 4 occasions, even if the customer is only buying a tiny amount of meat, you would still force the butcher to slaughter the animal. So that's those occasions. So Kofin Oso Lishchot, we force him to slaughter it. Lefichach im meis. Therefore, if the bull was to die before the animal got slaughtered, meis lalokeach, it dies at the expense of the buyer who loses his dinar. Aval b'shayamos hashana, but if it was any other day of the year when we're not compelling him, which would mean that the guy is giving his money, but the butcher is holding off from slaughtering the animal, ein okain, it's not going to be the case. Lefichach im meis, if the bull dies before he gets to slaughter it, meis lamocher, then the seller is going to lose out and he has to give the money back to the customer because he was holding out and waiting to be able to slaughter the animal, and so no transaction had really taken place yet because he had not slaughtered the animal. And the final Mishnah for chapter 5 this evening. So we may recall that with regards to sacrifices, you only have it goes by the daytime. The start of a day is the period of time in which you can sacrifice an animal. But with regards to this halacha of slaughtering the mother and the offspring, that goes from night to night. Says the Mishnah, Yom echad ha'amur ba'oso ve'espano. It says in the pasuk, with regards to this halacha of not slaughtering the mother and the offspring, it uses the words Yom echad, one day. Hayom holech achar halayla, which is to teach us that the day goes after the night. So it starts in the nighttime. The stretch of time in which you cannot slaughter these two animals on the same day starts at nightfall and continues until the next night. Es zo dorash Shimon ben Zoma, and it was on this that Rabbi Shimon derived as follows: Ne'emar b'maaseh bereshis yom echad. With regards to the order of creation, on day one, the Torah says Vayhi erev vayhi voker, which teaches us that it starts in the night rather than the day. Vayhi erev, and it was night, and it was day. Yom echad. So that's the way the Torah phrases the first day of creation. V'ne'emar ba'oso ve'espanom. With regards to this halacha, it says in the pasuk Yom echad. It also uses the language of Yom echad. So Shimon ben Zoma creates a gezerah shava, a cross application in the merit of the same words being used. And draws a conclusion. Ma yom echad ha'amur b'maaseh bereshis. Just like it said one day, as in it says Yom Echad, those words, with regards to creation, Hayom Holech Achar Laila. And we know from, halachically, from the source of creation, that days go by the night. Af Yom Echad Ha'amur ba'oso ba'esbeno. So too, with regards to our halacha over here, Hayom Holech Achar Laila. The period of time is activated by the nighttime, not by the daytime. Mazel tov, everybody, on completing chapter 5. And let's go straight into chapter 6. So, generally, wrong book of notes. Let's try that one again. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll read that again. Chapter 6. We are discussing the halacha of Kisui Hadam. The mitzvah of covering the blood after slaughter. So that only applies to profane animals, to animals which are not going to be used for sacrifices, and it's only going to apply to kosher species of animals and birds, whether they are wild or whether they are undomesticated, but it's not going to apply to behemoths. So says the Mishnah, Kisui Hadam, the mitzvah of covering blood. Right, when you slaughter an animal and the blood comes out from the source of the wound, from the neck, so that blood has to be covered in some way. Noheg ba'aretz v'chutz la'aretz. It has to be followed. It has to be. It applies both inside Eretz Yisrael and outside Eretz Yisrael. Bifnei habayis v'shelo bifnei habayis, whether it's at the time of the Beis Hamikdash or not. Even now, Chullin avalo b'mukdashim, but it only applies to non-sacrificial animals. It doesn't apply to sacrifices. V'noheg b'chaya uva'of, and it applies to animals which are undomesticated, and it applies to birds. B'mezuman v'she'eno b'mezuman, whether you have had them as pets at home, or whether they, or it says on the screen, they're readily available in his home, or whether they are not available in his home, they're being hunted in the wild. V'noheg b'koi, and it applies also to an animal called a koi. What is a koi? A koi might be a buffalo, but the point is that it's an animal which we are halachically unsure if it's counted as a behemoth, as a beast, or a chayil, just as a wild animal. So this koi also has the halacha of kisui hadam applied to it, mipnei shehu safek, because there's a chance that it fits the criteria for the mitzvah to be applied to it. But, says the Mishnah, v'ein shochatin oso b'yom tov, you are not allowed to slaughter a koi on Yom Tov. Why are you not allowed to slaughter it on Yom Tov? Because it might be a behemoth. And if it's a behemoth, then you can't cover it with dust, because dust or earth or whatever it is, fundamentally it's muktzah, if it's not being used for a mitzvah. And we don't know if the mitzvah applies or not. So you can't slaughter it because you can't do kisui hadam with the dust or the earth or whatever, because that is muktzah if it's not for a mitzvah. And we don't know if it's a mitzvah or not. And if you do cover the blood on Yom Tov, then people might think that it is a chaya and it's legit and it's all okay. And if people think it's a chaya, a wild animal, then people are going to think that the fats are allowed to be eaten, because you're allowed to eat the fats of a chaya. But if it's a behemah, you're not allowed to eat the fats of a behemah. So you could be causing all kinds of problems by slaughtering this animal on Yom Tov. So they're not allowed to do it. V'im shachatu, and if you did go and slaughter it, then ein mechasin es damo, then you should not cover the blood until after Yom Tov. After Yom Tov, you could cover it, because it's a safek d'oraisa, it's a biblical doubt, and maybe you do need to be covering it. So you would have to do that after Yom Tov and not on Yom Tov itself. Mishnah base. Hashochet v'nimsa treifa. If you slaughter this undomesticated animal or bird and then find that it is a treifa, v'hashochet la'avodah zara, or you slaughter it for the sake of avodah zara, v'hashochet chullin bifnim, or you're slaughtering a profane animal within the confines of the Beit HaMikdash, or v'kodshim b'chutz, you're slaughtering this wild animal, undomesticated animal, outside of the Beit HaMikdash, but it was a sacrifice. Chaya va'of haniskalim, or it was a chaya, an undomesticated animal or bird that was sentenced to be stoned, for example, for killing a person. So even though we cannot be eating any of these animals, Rabbi Meir Mechayev, Rabbi Meir says you have to cover the blood. The Chachamim Potrim, and the Chachamim say that you don't have to, that you are exempt from covering the blood, because the slaughter has not made the meat fit to eat, and so therefore you're not going to be chayav in kisui hadam. Hashochet v'nisnav la biyado. If you slaughter it and it becomes a carcass in your hand, you slaughtered it incorrectly. Hanocher, or you pierced the heart. V'hama'aker, or you've uprooted the windpipe and the gullet. Pater milchsos, then you're going to be exempt from covering the blood, because no shechita halachically has taken place, and you only have to cover the blood if a valid shechita has taken place. Mishnah Gimel. Cheresh, if a deaf mute or a shoter or somebody who is mentally impaired, I would say, v'katan, or a minor, sheshachatu, who slaughter an undomesticated animal or bird, va'acherim ro'in or son, but someone has watched them do it to make sure that it was properly done, then the Mishnah says chayiv lechasos, then you have to cover the blood because it is a valid shchita. Continues the Mishnah, beinan leveinat sman, if they that's right, it is, yeah. So I was right. If they slaughtered it without supervision, they just slaughtered it amongst themselves, patur milchasos, then it's going to be exempt from the obligation to cover the blood, because we suspect that it was an improper shchita. V'chein le'inyan oso v'es beno, with regards to our halacha that we saw in the previous chapter of slaughtering the mother and the offspring, sheshachatu va'acherim ro'inosan, that one of these types of people have slaughtered it, but others have supervised it, asur lishchot acharehen, then you're not going to be allowed to slaughter the offspring afterwards, because you will be creating this prohibition of slaughtering them on the same day. Says the Mishnah, though, beinan leveinat sman, but if they slaughter one of them amongst themselves, Rabbi Meir matir lishchot acharehen, then theoretically you can slaughter the offspring on the same day, because the first one was not a shchita. But Chachamim osrim, the Chachamim say that it's going to be prohibited. Umodim, but they'll agree, shim shachat, that if you did sacrifice the offspring afterwards, she'eino sofeg es arabayim, then you're not going to incur the punishment of 40 lashes, because maybe the mother was not slaughtered properly after all. Mishnah Daled. You don't have to interrupt individual shechitot in order to cover the blood for each one. You can do one action of covering the blood for all of the for all of the animals that have been killed. Says the Mishnah, Shachat mea chayos b'makom echad. You slaughter 100 animals in one go. And of course, they're not going to be mothers and children. Kisui echad lechulam. You can do one covering for all of these animals. Mea ofos b'makom echad. You can slaughter 100 birds in one place. Kisui echad lechulam. And you can do one covering for all of them. Chay v'of b'makom echad. If you slaughter a bunch of if you slaughter one animal and one bird at the same time in the same place, kisui echad lechulan, then the first position in the Mishnah says one covering of the blood is sufficient. Rabbi Yehuda says shachat chaya yechasena. You do the animal and then you cover it. V'achar kach yishchot es ha'of. Then you do the bird and then you would cover that. They have separate mitzvot, even though they are both shchita, as it were. They are considered as separate mitzvot because they are different types of animals. Now, fundamentally, ideally, the person doing the shchita should cover the blood. If not, then somebody else has to do it. Shachat velo kisa. If you slaughter it, but you did not cover the blood yourself, v'ra'ahu acher. Someone else sees that you've left this exposed blood. Chayav lechasos. They should go and do it. They are obligated to cover it. Kisahu v'niskala. What if you cover the blood, but it becomes uncovered? Says the Mishnah, patur milechasos. Then you are exempt from covering it again. Kisahu haruach. If you didn't cover it, but wind blew dust onto the blood, then the Mishnah says, chayav lechasos. Even though the blood is already covered, you have to cover the blood again if it becomes uncovered, because it was never covered by you. So I'm sorry. If the wind covers it, you don't have to cover it again. But if the wind blows it off and it becomes revealed, then you are now obligated to cover the blood a second time, even though in the previous case you didn't have to. Says the Mishnah in Mishnah, hey, let's scroll down a little bit and get the right page. There is says the Mishnah, Dam shnis arev b'mayim. If the blood of this animal or this bird gets mixed with water, im yesh bo maris dam, if there is an appearance of blood, it hasn't been diluted to such an extent, chayav lechasos, then you're going to be obligated to cover the blood. Nis arev bayayin, what if the blood gets mixed in with red wine? What happens then? We consider the wine, or we view the wine as if it is water. And so, if enough wine falls into the blood or gets mixed up with the blood, that if it was water would dilute the appearance, then it's going to be treated like water. If it's not enough to dilute the blood, if it was water, but it's not, it's wine. But if it was not enough, and so it still would have the appearance of blood, if it had been mixed in with water, then it would still need to be covered. Nis'arav b'dam ha'bahema or b'dam ha'chaya. What if the blood gets mixed up with the behema, the domesticated animal, which you don't have to cover, or b'dam ha'chaya, or the blood of an undomesticated animal which didn't come from shchita? So the Mishnah says again, ro'in or soke ilu hamayim. Then you have to consider how much it's been mixed with, and if it had been water, what effect would it have had? That's how you assess whether the blood still needs to be covered or not. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ein dam mevatel dam. Rabbi Yehuda says blood does not nullify blood, and therefore, if there is blood that would need to be covered and it's still within this mixture, Rabbi Yehuda says that you still have to cover the blood, irrespective of how much has been mixed in. Mishnah Vav. Dam hanitas. If you have blood that squirts away, goes squirts a long way away, or v'she'al hasakin, or you've got blood that is remaining on the knife, chayv lechasos, that blood has to be covered as well. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, Masai, when is this? When does this apply? Bizman she'ein sham dam elahu. That's only when there's no other blood remaining except for that blood. Aval yesh sham dam shalohu, but if there is other blood remaining, patur milchasos, then you don't have to cover it. Says the Mishnah in Mishnah Zayin, what are we using to cover the blood? Bameh machasin, what can we use to cover? Uvameh ein machasin, and what can't we use to cover? So the Torah says that it has to be dirt. But this fundamentally means something that you can plant in. So we start first with the things that you can use to cover the blood. Mechasim bezevel hadak. You can use very fine fertilizer, fine manure. Uvechol hadak. You can use very fine sand. Basid. You can use lime. Uvecharsis. You can use crushed up clay. Uvelevena. And you can use bricks. I guess crushed up bricks, maybe. Uvemegufa, or you can use, I've got cork written here, Uvemegufa shekasashan. Yeah, Uvelevena uvemegufa shekasashan. If it's ground up bricks or ground up cork, you can use those things to cover. It has to be something fundamentally that can absorb the blood and that you can grow things in it. Aval ein mechasin lo v'zevel agas. You can't use thick manure, v'lo v'cholagas, or thick, coarse sand, v'lo bilevena u'v'megufa shelo kasashan, and you can't use bricks and cork that have not been crushed up, v'lo yichpe alav esakli, and you can't just cover another vessel on top of it. Klal Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. The general rule, general principle from Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel is davar shmegadel bo tzmachin mechasin bo. Anything which could be used for planting, for growing plants, mechasin bo, can be used to cover the blood. V'she'enu megadel tzmachin ein mechasin bo. And if it can't be used to grow anything in it, then you can't use it to cover the blood. Mazel tov, everybody, on completing chapter 6. Now, we've only been going 47 minutes, guys, so what say we go into chapter 7 as well? It's a short chapter, and I'm hoping it won't take us long. So chapter 7 is dealing with the Gid Hanasheh. For those of us who may recall or don't know what the Gid Hanasheh is, it's the sciatic nerve. It's the what's the word? Nerve? Gid, sinew. It's the sinew that we were forbidden from eating, because that is the place on the body where Yaakov was injured when he fought the angel overnight. So we have inherited that prohibition of eating the Gid Hanasheh ever since that time. But there's a machlokes, whether there's a disagreement, whether the Gid Hanasheh is from the right leg or whether it's from both legs. So for most of the perek, we're going to assume both, but Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that it's just the right leg. Now, I could have probably found a diagram. I'm sorry that I haven't done that. Biblically, only the inner part of the sinew at the top by the hip, where it connects to the rump, is forbidden. So if we can imagine the backside of let's say a cow, so it's going to be the sinew right up at the top by its hip where it connects to the rump. Hopefully we can somewhat picture a cow, even if we can't somewhat picture the Gid Hanasheh. Okay, says the Mishnah, Gid Hanasheh noheg ba'aretz v'chutza la'aretz. The Gid Hanasheh, this sciatic nerve, this sinew, the prohibition applies whether you are in Eretz Yisrael or outside of Eretz Yisrael. Bifnei habayis, v'shelo bifnei habayis, whether it's the time of the temple or not. b'chullin of mukdashin, or whether it's profane, or whether it is a sacrifice, you cannot eat the gid hanasher. Says the Mishnah, v'noheg b'behema v'chaya. This halacha applies to behemoths, to domesticated animals, and to undomesticated animals. Bayarech shel yamin u'bayarech shel small. The first position, as we said in the Mishnah, is that it applies to the right leg and it applies to the left leg. Ve'eno noheg ba'of. It does not apply to a bird. Why? Because they don't have them. Mipnei she'eino chaf. Because they don't have this particular joint from which the gid hanasher would be. V'noheg bashalil. It applies to a fetus, a fully fledged, full-term offspring, which is still in the womb. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Eino Noheg Bashalil. Rabbi Yehuda says, since you could eat this animal fundamentally without shchita from within the womb, so therefore it has the halachic status of being part of the mother, which means that the gid hanasher is just the part of the mother, and it should be kosher, just as if it's part of the stomach of the mother. So Rabbi Yehuda Omer says that the gid hanasher wouldn't be prohibited if it was from this fetus. V'chelbo mutar, and the fats as well would be permitted, even though the fats from the mother would be prohibited. Ve'ein hatabachim ne'emanim ala gid hanasher divrei Rabbi Meir. The butchers are not deemed trustworthy to say that they have removed the gid hanasher, according to Rabbi Meir. We do trust, according to the Chachamim, we do trust the butchers to say that they have removed these problematic parts of the animal. I've got a note here which says that the chaylev, these problematic fats, are found in the chest cavity and the stomach, and they are very severe because they have a chiyuv kares. They have a penalty of kares applied to them if you were to eat them. Mishnah base. So we're going to see here that if a person did not remove the gid hanasher, you would be able to give it to a non-Jewish person. Sholeach adam yarech lanachri shegid hanasher b'soicha. You are allowed to... Sorry, one second. Yeah, I think the English is... no, I don't know where the English is for the beginning of Mishnah base, but that is not accurate. Sholeach adam yarech lanachri shegid hanasher b'soicha. You can send an animal to a non-Jewish person, or you can send the thigh to a non-Jewish person with the gid hanasher still in it, mipnei shemakamon nikar, because it is recognizable to the non-Jew, and so it's not going to be. I think since it's obvious that it's still there, we don't have to be concerned that the non-Jew is going to then try and pass it on to a Jewish person. Hanotel gid hanasher, one who removes the gid hanasher, sarich sheyitoles kulo, you have to be careful to remove the whole thing. Rabbi Yehuda Omer kedei lekayim bo mitzvahs natila. Rabbi Yehuda says you don't have to remove the whole thing; you just have to do what is required, and take out enough to fulfill the mitzvah. But you don't have to remove everything. You have to be careful not to eat it, but you don't have to remove it as well. Says the Mishnah in Mishnah Gimel, Ha'ochel megid hanasher kazayis sofer garmayin. If you eat an olive's bulk worth of this gid hanasher, then the person incurs 40 lashes. Achalu v'yein bo kazayis. If you ate less than this, chayav, then you are liable. Sorry, let me try that one again. Achalo, if you ate a whole gid hanasher, but the gid hanasher v'ein bo kazayis was not the requisite size, chayav. Since you've eaten the whole entity, you are still going to be chayav for the lashes, even though it was not a kazayis, an olive's bulk worth. Achal mizeh kazayis and mizeh kazayis. If you eat 2 olive bulks worth of gid hanasher, sofeg shmonin, you're going to incur 2 penalties of 40 lashes, resulting in 80 lashes, because 40 plus 40, believe it or not, is 80. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Einog Sofeg Ela Abayim. Rabbi Yehuda says you're only going to incur 40 lashes for eating from the right leg. Mizeh u'mizeh meant right leg and left leg. So the Tana Kama will say you get for both because it applies to both. Rabbi Yehuda says you only get 40 lashes because the mitzvah only applies, or the prohibition only applies to the right thigh. It doesn't apply to the left thigh. And so if you ate that Gid Hanasher as well, you're only going to get lashed one time. Well, 40 times, but one set of lashes. Mishnah Dalet. The Mishnah is presuming that the Gid Hanasher, that this sinew, gives off a taste. Even though that's not universally agreed upon, we are going to, the Mishnah is assuming that it does. And that's a problem, because if it gives off a taste, then it's going to have an impact on other foods as well. So the Mishnah says, Yarich shenispashel ba Gid Hanasher. If you've cooked up the thigh, and the Gid Hanasher is there, im yesh ba b'nosei tam. If there's enough Gid Hanasher there to impart flavor to the rest of the thigh, then the Mishnah says, Harezo asara, then it's going to be forbidden to eat the entire thigh. Ketzad misharinosa, how do we evaluate and ascertain if it's imparting enough flavor? So the Mishnah says, Kabasar belefes. We use the same formula as if it was meat and turnips. So we assume they have different tastes, even though that's not universally agreed upon. And we examine the ratio of gid to basar. So for turnip, I think if the turnip is comprising 1/100th, so 1% of the mixture, that's enough flavor for meat to impart flavor to the turnip. Or I guess vice versa, I'm not too sure. Right? So if the ratio of gid to basar is 1%, then it's going to be assumed that it's imparting flavor, and then it is going to be forbidden. There is an opinion that says it has no taste, and so according to that opinion, you just have to remove the Gid Hanasher, and then you can eat the rest of the thigh. But it's interesting nonetheless. Mishnah Hey, we're assuming still that it's imparting flavor, and it's giving off taste. So the Mishnah says, Gid Hanasher shenispashel imagidin. If you've got this Gid Hanasher which is being cooked up with other sinews which are permitted, bisman shemakira, at a time where the Gid Hanasher is identifiable and can be removed, but no same time, then the halacha is if it's imparted flavor, then you can't eat the rest of the sinews. But if it has not imparted enough flavor, then when you remove it, then you can eat the rest of the gidin, of the sinews. We could be thinking, I'm familiar with a 1 out of 60, a 60th. I thought that was a very famous proportion that would tell us whether things are kosher or not kosher. It would seem that does not apply for the Gid Hanasher. Says the Mishnah, Ve'im lav kulan asurim. But if it's not recognizable, if it's completely mixed in, or it's giving off too much flavor, then kulan asurim, then the whole thing becomes forbidden. V'harotev. So if there was also rotev, which is sauce, or in this case it says on the screen broth. So the Mishnah says, "B'no same ta'am." If it's imparting flavor, then it's going to be problematic. V'chein chasicha shel nevela. When it comes to a piece of animal carcass, v'chein chaticha shel dag tamei shenisbashlu ima chatichot. If you've got forbidden fish, non-kosher fish, which has been mixed in with other pieces of kosher fish or meat, bisman shemakiran, if they are recognizable, and you can remove it, then b'no sein ta'am. Then as long as it's not imparted flavor into the dish, you can still eat the rest of the dish. Ve'im lav kulan asurat. If not, then it's all forbidden. Va'arotev b'no sein ta'am. And the same with the broth, with the sauce as well. If the broth is only going to be forbidden if the problematic piece was imparting flavor. And finally, for the evening, Mishnah Vav. Which animals does this prohibition apply to? Says the Mishnah, Noheg batahora. The prohibition of eating the Gid Hanasher applies to a kosher animal. Ve'eno noheg batmeah. but it's not going to apply to a non-kosher animal. You can't eat a non-kosher animal. But says Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Af bat me'ah. It even applies to a non-kosher animal, meaning we know we can't eat a non-kosher animal, but will you get punished separately for eating the gid hanasher of a non-kosher animal? So according to the first position, you're not. You're going to be punished for only eating a non-kosher animal. You don't get punished separately for eating the gid hanasher. According to Rabbi Yehuda, there's going to be two punishments, two isurim, two prohibitions. One for eating the non-kosher animal, and one for eating the gid hanasher. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, V'halo mibnei Yaakov ne'esar gid hanasher. Was this commandment not given to us already by the time of Yaakov Avinu? V'adayin behema tmea muteres lahen. And this was a time when you were allowed to eat non-kosher animals. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, it's two separate prohibitions, and you're going to get two separate punishments if you ended up doing both. Amru la, but the Chachamim say back, the Sinai ne'emar, it was stated at Mount Sinai, ela shenichtav b'makomo, but it was written in the place where it happened. But fundamentally, the Chachamim are saying the mitzvah kicked in at the time of Matan Torah, at the time of Mount Sinai, and therefore, say the Chachamim, you're only going to get punished one time for eating the non-kosher animal, and not get punished separately for eating the gid hanasher. And with that, Mazel Tov everybody on completing chapter 7, Perek Zayin of Maseches Chullin. And that's all for tonight, and that's all for this week. So join us again for Mishnah Mastery next week, and in the meantime,